Hello, everyone. We're live. Welcome to our webinar today, Unlocking Audience Centricity. I'm welcoming you from a very sunny Munich today. So, hi, Andreas. You're joining me today for this webinar. Good to see you in Koblenz. How's the weather?
Thank you, Alina, and good morning, everyone. Glad that you are all joining. Weather is good here as well in Koblenz. I'm excited for this session today.
Amazing. We've got a very exciting session prepared for you today, Unlocking Audience Centricity, where we want to answer one very important question. What does our audience really feel, and what do they think when they consume our content? So today is all about sentiment analysis and impact measurement. Impact measurement really still is the blind spot for most communication teams. And sentiment is one very important aspect of that. So not only to check sentiments on one specific channel, but to really fully integrate it into your content operations and comms strategy. So just for quick housekeeping in the beginning, I can already see people in the chat and slowly coming in. This session, as usually, is recorded, and you will receive the YouTube video and also the slide deck probably this afternoon if we're pretty fast with it. So you can revise it, you can share it with your team. And one other important aspect, this webinar, as you can hear, is on English. But we have the possibility to get subtitles here within this webinar tool. So down below, you will find the possibility with the subtitle sign to turn on German subtitles. They're AI generated, but they're quite okay. Sometimes they misspell Scompler, but they're good to follow. So please feel free to do that. And another thing that's worth mentioning, this is a very exciting webinar for us because it's really interesting when we connect webinars to launch days, because actually today is the day where we are launching our feature Audience Pulse. So what we're going to talk about today is actually going live as we speak. You can already find it within Scompler, within our community management. But to really explain to you what we mean by it, what was the idea behind it, and why sentiment analysis is so important, is our topic for today. So to present ourselves, I think, Andreas, did you leave the stage? No, but you're still here, right?
I'm still here. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Because I am very happy to be joined by Andreas today. Andreas Schäfer is a senior product manager at Scompler, who owns different departments within our product regarding, for example, topic architecture, insights and reports, community management inside our platform. And today, Andreas, you really are the expert for everything regarding Audience Pulse and sentiment analysis. So amazing to have you here today.
Thank you, Alina. And once again, thank you everybody for joining. We are very excited for today's topic, and we'll do our best to make this also an insightful webinar for all of you.
Exactly. And just a quick sentence to myself. I'm Alina. I'm Senior Content Marketing Manager at Scompler. I host our webinars. I also take care of customer stories, of events. So probably if this isn't your first Scompler webinar, you've probably seen me before. But I'm very excited to be here for the first time actually with Andreas. So everything, there's new stuff going on every time. So looking forward. And before we jump into our concrete insights and the deep dive on sentiment analysis, just a quick spot of our topics for today. So we want to talk about social media strategy and operations, giving you insights in your daily comms hassle and why sentiment analysis actually matters, and then introducing Audience Pulse, what it looks like in practice, and giving you an overview of the bigger picture and what's next actually regarding not only sentiment analysis, but also audience centricity, narrative intelligence, where we want to support communication and marketing teams further on. And at the end, as usual, we want to get your feedback, your questions. We'd love to answer them. So please feel free to use the chat function. It's on the right side of the Webinar Geek platform. You can have the chat and you have the Q&A. The Q&A section is quite practical because you can actually upvote questions that you're particularly interested in. So yes, we will make sure to answer all of them. And maybe just as a side note, when we prepared this webinar, we actually also noticed that we're gonna really try to give you a compact overview and helpful insights in around 30 to 35 minutes. So preparing this webinar, we were shorter and we were quicker than usual. So there really is more than enough time to answer questions and for you guys to be done right in time before lunch break. That's always the risky thing if you do a webinar from 11 to 12, that at 11:45, everyone gets a little bit uneasy and ready for lunch, but no worries about that. Okay, so I hope everyone can hear us well, but I feel like there probably would have been messages in the chat if there have been any technical issues. But yeah, let's start and let's get into our topic for today. So starting with social media strategy and operations. This is actually exciting because we've never really talked about social media in depth or sentiment analysis in depth in a Scompler webinar before. So I'm really excited to position ourselves with this topic today because it's quite important. In many companies, social media management is still viewed primarily from a very operational perspective. So who posts, what, when, and on which channels. So that's why we brought 4 different social media pillars today. And most teams are really strong in number 2 and number 3. So really number 2, editorial planning, implementing transparent planning processes, calendar views. Probably all of us work with some kind of calendar view in a way, not only for our social media management, but also for communication management and content planning in total. We have our topics, we have all of the channels and the teams within different calendars. And we also have timings and responsibilities. So most companies are really good in actually knowing what are the deadlines, what are the timings, and what our calendars, our transparent processes where we can look at that. And of course, the pillar of production and publishing. So really workflows, approval processes, using AI-assisted production measures for creating social media content, whether it's text, video, graphic design. We do get AI help a lot these days, which is important as well. And also regarding direct publishing, time postings, community management, companies with great social media management are really good at having these workflows implemented in their daily communication work. But we really want to look at the social media management as a power that it really holds today, because these channels really give communication teams and companies the possibility to reach their communities, but also to reach other audiences, for CEOs or thought leaders to really position themselves as faces for topics that they are really passionate about. And for social media teams just to be fun and creative and have fun with creating social media content. But all of that actually starts one step earlier before we actually get into editorial planning. Because really by asking ourselves what topics, messages, and goals underlie each post. So to stop thinking just in a specific channel, just content for LinkedIn, for TikTok, or one specific reel that you want to post, but really thinking about your topic architecture, your goals, your personas, and your different target groups that you want to reach within your social media content. And we noticed that social media strategy and operations actually ends one step further when we talk about impact measurement. So really by asking whether the communication that we share on social media has actually moved our audiences or if it's actually merely reached them. So regarding, of course, the metrics that we know and that we track every day, the quantitative metrics, such as reach, engagement, share. but also focusing on qualitative metrics, the sentiment of the audience. So what do people really feel when they see our content? And these insights from all of these different metrics regarding impact measurement, regarding sentiment, they feed right back into the strategy framework, into topics, and into storylines to make social media communication even more powerful and optimize it continuously. So what we brought with you today is actually a case where I hope that most of you can actually relate to it. This is the case of Thomas. You can see him on the left side, and to be completely transparent, this is actually our colleague Tony. So this is a real picture, a real person. So we like to use our real pictures. It's not AI generated, but Tony is actually heading the sales department at Scompler. So he has nothing to do with social media management. But today he is Thomas, and he is social media manager at a mid-sized machinery manufacturer. So yesterday actually was the grand opening of their new production hall. So Thomas spent the last few weeks to really prepare everything that was going on for this grand opening. But as we all know, a lot of communication still kind of happens pretty ad hoc. So he already had the LinkedIn post prepared, but the Instagram stories were live from the grand opening. Content for TikTok was kind of spontaneously produced, but Thomas did a really great job. He posted a lot. You can see all of the impressions and the reach on the screenshot on the right side down below Thomas' picture. You can actually see, wow, there's engagement coming in, there's likes coming in, and a lot of reach. And also comments are running in on all of the different channels that Thomas is taking care of for this opening of their new production hall. But the next day, when they talk about this specific case in their weekly meeting, his boss actually wants to know, what are people thinking? And now I want to ask you guys. So I will ask you in a survey on the right side that you can probably see now in the interaction bubble. You can see a small purple number 1. And we prepared a small questionnaire for you. So if your boss asks you, how did our recent posts land with the audience across channels and topics, what would be your answer? So starting really with, I'd share sentiment data connected to our strategic topics, because we pretty much track this in a system. I'd show reach and engagement and walk my boss through the numbers of how many people we reached, how many people engaged. I'd more so have a little gut feeling based on the comments that I read. I'd need to go back and filter through the comments first, or I wouldn't even know where to start because there's actually so much going on. And yeah, it's interesting. I see the answers running in. So just to give you a couple of insights before I stop the survey and share it with you guys, 60%, Andreas, say I'd show reach and engagement and walk them through the numbers. So a lot of you are focused on quantitative measures and know about your reach, know about your engagement, which is a pretty positive sign, I'd say.
True.
True, but yeah, only 10% at the time actually say that they'd share sentiment data and connect it to strategic topics. So if I share the questionnaire now, you can see, yeah, most of you are really, really confident with your reach and engagement numbers with these quantitative metrics, and you know how to present them. You know how to present them to your boss, to senior managers, and based on comments, you kind of more so have a gut feeling, which I think is quite a realistic sign into daily comms work, because we are quite busy. We have a lot going on, and you do always kind of just scan comments, you answer the comments, and kind of get a little bit of an impression and a gut feeling of what people are thinking about your content and your topics. Let's continue, because actually with Thomas, it's quite the same. So Thomas doesn't really have the answer of what people are specifically thinking about the grand opening, because he just hasn't had the time to work through all the comments that really matter. Of course, he was online, he was doing his community management, he responded to certain comments, but the opening was just yesterday. So he really just didn't have the time within these couple of hours to have facts and numbers and sentiments with him. Down below on the left, I forgot to mention, you actually have the full-on guide, a deep dive for our social media strategy and operations blog post. So please feel free to scan that QR code and read it afterwards and share it with your team. And we actually have a couple of insights from Thomas and other use cases embedded into that blog post. And also regarding sentiment analysis, because moving on to the next slide, Thomas does know two things. He knows his reach, and he can kind of prove with that reach that he was active, that he was producing content, he was posting it. It was reaching people, and that's a great thing, not only for himself as a social media manager, but also to share with the team, to share with the broader communication team. Hey, we really did a lot of cool stuff yesterday on social media for this production hall opening. And he also has the engagement. So he can prove that people noticed. People noticed that there was a lot going on the different social media challenges. People noticed that there was a big opening and that the company was really active on social. But neither of these metrics show Thomas in that sense that what he was producing, the content he put out there, that it really landed within his audience. So audience centricity really isn't longer just a buzzword, but it is becoming a daily requirement for communication teams. For example, if we look at the output impact gap, right? Communication teams are asked to prove impact, not just activity. And this matters for leadership, for C-level, for head of communications, but it also matters for comms managers that are working in the operational communication work, because we all, I guess, kind of want to make an impact with our work. And if we give a lot of time and energy and resources into great social media content, we really do want to see how did it land, what's the impact behind it, and if it didn't land that well, what's the problem? What can we optimize? Is the topic the problem? Were other things not really getting the audience in the right way? And we also have a volume problem. And I think that's also a point that some of you probably really notice within your daily communication work. There's a lot going on. Like, we're talking about so many different topics, even more channels. AI is coming in. We're all kind of finding our way with working with AI. And social media management is quite important to reach our communities. So there are comments running into all of the different channels, dozens to hundreds of comments per week, obviously depending on your organization, also on your organization size. I saw in our registration list that we have a couple of our biggest customers here today. So very, very big companies that probably have a lot of social media content going out there every week and a lot of comments and reactions running back into you. And that's a thing, we can't really keep up with it manually. And this actually connects really well to a quote from Luca and Schäfer in the communication management radar from this year. So they say artificial likes, comments, and shares create the illusion of popularity and consensus where little genuine human engagement exists. And it really sets up that bridge, right? Like, we do know our likes, we know our comments, we know our shares, but we don't really know where actually human engagement is genuine, or if it's just, the LinkedIn likes and upvotes that we all get, or that the CEO always gets on his postings. But what of that is really genuine? So we were trying to solve this strategic blind spot because sentiment actually really matters for many different reasons. And two of these reasons are brand reputation and customer satisfaction. And 3 different surveys that show this quite well. We prepared this when we were planning this webinar, just because I was like, we kind of need more data. We need more numbers on sentiment, on sentiment analysis within social media management to kind of prove the point why it's so important for organizations and brand reputation to really think about this. One number that I found really interesting. 72%, wrong beginning of the sentences. Companies that use sentiment analysis to, when they handle their crisis communication, respond 72% faster to these crisis matters than organizations who handle community management manually. So we're really talking about efficiency here, which is a huge topic for communication teams. Another number that I found very interesting, and just to put this into perspective, this is a number from Delta Airlines out of their annual report from 2 years ago. So obviously Delta Airlines is a huge airline, and airlines are pretty open, I guess, to negative sentiment coming in for different reasons, but obviously airlines are much more risked and much more open to different forms of issue management and crisis communication than maybe other industries. But still, I found it really interesting that Delta shared that their sentiment-based crisis management protocol has actually reduced the financial impact of operational disruptions by around 22% year over year. So as I said, airline pretty risky to negativity and crises coming from the outside, but still an impressive number. And also another study says that companies integrating sentiment data into their decision-making processes saw an average of 23% improvement in customer satisfaction scores over 12 months. And these 2 topics, brand reputation and customer satisfaction, is something that matters to different organizations, to different companies from all of the different industries. Which brings me to the next point before I want to hand over to Andreas to really get us started with our sentiment analysis and audience pulse. Why is this actually important for us and why are we talking about it? A quick introduction, just 1 minute for everyone who might be new here to Scompler and who's new here to our webinars. We at Scompler, we really care about brand reputation and customer satisfaction regarding my last slide, because Scompler is actually the platform for managing strategic communication management. So what Scompler does is really we connect goals, messages, channels, and teams all in one platform for more consistent, efficient, and effective communication. Social media management and sentiment is one very important aspect of that, but really in Scompler, teams can connect their topics, their messages from strategy through planning to publishing, all within one platform to really enable collaborative work, to reduce these silos, to reduce this copy-pasting across communication teams. We work together with more than 450 companies, more than 14 DAX companies as well, within this challenge of making communication more strategic, more effective, and just more fun for everyone working in comms. But yeah, let's continue to talk about social media management and sentiment, because we actually have a pretty, we have social media management within Scompler, and we also have community management within Scompler. But just to give you a transparent overview of what that looks like today, because obviously this is the status quo where we're starting within our social media management, right? So with the community management, we already have one inbox for every audience conversation. So what does that actually mean? Basically, within the community management, you can include all of the 6 important social media channels, from LinkedIn to Instagram to TikTok, YouTube, etc. You can see them down below. You can reply directly within the platform. You can assign comments to your team. You can integrate statuses and tags. You can also leave internal notes. So all of that is really working already. But when we're talking about how does the audience really feel about the content and about social media content, we didn't have that until now, because this really is where Audience Pulse now lives, the qualitative layer on top of everything that community management nowadays already does for communication teams. So to wrap my part up and then hand it over to Andreas to give us even more practical insights, I just want to wrap it up by saying we already started now from what our audiences do, right? The reach, the engagement, the trends. We already know all of that. Now we integrate the qualitative part on how our audiences really feel. Do they feel positive about it? Do they have some doubts? What actually is a net sentiment score? And how is the sentiment in our different channels and also rolled up to the level where we plan our topics? And together, really including these two layers of metrics, you get the full picture of how your communication lands. So this really isn't a vice versa. We don't want to say that reach, engagement, clicks aren't important, but together with the qualitative layer, you really get the full picture of your communication work. And that's where I want to hand it over to Andreas to show us what we built and what Audience Pulse is all about.
Yes, and thank you, Alina. So this is what we built. So today we're introducing Audience Pulse, and as Alina said it, we are always very excited about product launches because Audience Pulse also goes live to all existing customers today. So over the next few minutes, I'd like to walk you through it. So what it actually is, who we build it for, how it looks like inside of Scompler, and where we are heading from here. So let's start with what it is. Audience Pulse is essentially an automated sentiment classification and analytics capability for Scompler. And it's made up of 3 parts, and all these 3 serve a single goal, and that is to help you to understand how your communication lands emotionally. So not just whether it went out and how many people saw it, but how people actually felt about it. And the first part here is classify. This means that every inbound comment that comes through your connected channels is automatically classified as either positive, neutral, negative, or mixed. And the cool thing is that happens completely out of the box for you. So you don't take anything, you don't set anything up. But the moment a comment lands, it's already carrying its tone. So you're getting an instant signal with 0 manual effort. And the second part here is prioritize. This means once everything is classified, you can filter your inbox by sentiment. So picture again the Monday morning situation from Thomas. There's a weekend backlog with a pile of comments waiting for you. And instead of reading through all of them top to bottom, you can simply filter to just show the negative ones, and you deal with what actually needs a human first. So the signals that matter surface for you immediately. And the third part here is aggregate. And this is the part that I would call the genuine Scompler part, because it's where we do something that most tools actually don't, because we don't stop at classifying the single comments, but we roll that sentiment up across your entire topic architecture, which means in Scompler language, your topics, your stories, and your articles. So not only the individual communication measures you're publishing, but also the campaigns and initiatives you're already working on. And by that, we want to give you a strategic bird's eye view. So on any campaign or topic, you can see how your communication landed emotionally, sitting right next to the performance metrics, or the quantitative layer that also already lives there and that we are also providing in Scompler. Now, a quick word on the categories, because you might notice we go with 4, not the usual 3. So alongside positive, neutral, and negative, we added a 4th one called mixed. And mixed is actually a bit of a hidden champion, because mixed applies when a single comment carries both positive and negative things at the same time. So think of something like great idea, but bad execution, for example. This helps also to catch some trickier signals, as we call it, like sarcasm or irony, that also many sentiment tools sometimes miss. So this gives you a much more nuanced picture of how people really reacted. And because this matters to a lot of you, a big note on data and security, because Audience Pulse runs entirely in the European Union. So we are using AWS servers in Frankfurt, and we obviously do no model training on your data whatsoever. So our implementation is fully GDPR compliant, and it's also completely tenant isolated, which means nothing, never ever leaves your own Scompler project. So that's what it does. But the next natural question is, who did we actually build this for? So we built Audience Pulse for 2 roles, and they use it in 2 different ways, but they share one underlying signal. The first one here is operational, so the community managers that we've just been introduced to by Alina. And if you're in that seat, I mean, that's probably your reality. A comment comes in and you don't know whether it's really urgent until you've already read it, right? So you end up reading everything just to find out a few things that actually need you. And Audience Pulse hopefully takes that guesswork away for you, because every comment is flagged with its tone automatically. So you can handle the critical reactions first, cut your triage time, and you catch a negative spike the moment it starts. So instead of discovering it on Monday morning when it's already a couple of days old. The second role we are addressing here is clearly strategic. So we are talking about the communication leads or managers or head-offs. If that is you, you probably don't live in the inbox too much, right? So you're most likely not reading every single comment, but rather you're asking yourself a bigger question. Are the things we're putting out actually landing? Are the stories and campaigns that I planned weeks ago resonating the way I intended, or are we off somewhere? So reach and engagement, they only give you half the answer, but they tell you that people saw it and that they reacted. However, what they never told you is how people actually felt about it. And Audience Pulse adds exactly that layer, so the qualitative one, so you can finally see whether the emotional response matches what you set out to do in the first place. So we got two roles with one shared signal, and that signal is sentiment, right? And that's really the heart of it. So Audience Pulse turns community noise into strategic audience insight. With that, I would say enough just talking about it. It goes live to customers today. So let me show you how it actually looks like in reality. Again, starting on the community manager side, this is the inbox we've already been introduced to, right? So what you're looking at on screen here is Audience Pulse right inside our community management module as it goes live. And there are three things that Audience Pulse now adds new here. The first one is the already mentioned classification. So every incoming inbound is automatically tagged with the categories. So the badge tells you the tone without even opening it. And there's one nuance that also really helps in the inbox, because of a lot of what comes in isn't just a single comment, right, but a thread. So if you imagine on LinkedIn, I can also comment another comment, and by that a whole discussion of replies underneath is happening. So on top of tagging each of the individual replies, what we do, we also aggregate the whole thread into an overall trend, like mostly positive, mostly neutral, and so on and so forth. So this means you can see at a glance also how an entire conversation is trending without having to read every reply in it. The second capability is override, and this one also really matters because the model we use under the hood here is called Amazon Comprehend. This is a specialized AI-powered service that was trained on a huge data set of social media comments, and it's actually very, very good, but it might not be perfect in every single case, right? So at the end of the day, it's your judgment that wins because you are the experts, and what we are providing you here is an override capability for every individual classification, and it also just takes one click. And here's also the important part. When you override, it doesn't just fix this one single comment, but your override also flows up into the aggregated views for analytics. So they also recalculate automatically. So your one correction shapes the whole picture all the way up to the article, the story, and the topic. And the third part is the already mentioned filtering and triage. So you can filter the inbox by sentiment. So you surface everything negative or whatever it is you need to prioritize first. And also the cool part is this layers right on top of the workflow you already have. So it's really a drop-in. So nothing about how you or your colleagues work in the community module has to change. And last but not least, I wanted to make the 4 categories real for you using the example of our good old Thomas from the beginning. And if you remember, his company just opened a new production hall. And I will just take one comment per category to make them a little more tangible, right? So the first one we got here, it's clearly positive. So the user gives a genuine appreciation and real praise for the team and the opening. The second one here is neutral because it's literally a question, right? The user asks how many people will the new hall employ once it's running. So there's no praise, no criticism in it, no nothing. And a neutral is actually worth pausing on real quickly because especially in B2B, a lot of what feels positive is in reality just neutral. If you think of these typical LinkedIn phrases, I'm pleased to announce, or I'm thrilled to share. So this is really a thing. And hopefully Audience Pulse can also help you separate the two for you. And the third example is negative, because this one here is really pointed. So the user criticizes the wrong location and also the higher noise pollution for the local neighborhood. So that's clear criticism. And this is also the kind of comment that in the old way of working, you might have only found on Monday, 2 days too late. The fourth one, finally, is mixed. So this one praises that the company is growing at the one hand, but at the other hand, it criticizes how the location decision was communicated. So here we have good and bad in the same breath, and most tools would have forced that into the neutral categories, so you would have lost both signals. We at Scompler, we hold this one as mixed, because that's exactly the kind of feedback we think communication teams need to see. So that was the operational view. Now let's change seats to the strategic view. And that is someone who not so much lives in the inbox, but owns the bigger picture.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for the introduction on the operational side. Maybe to dive into one question that Rafaela just asked, because you were talking also about manual override and the possibility of manual override. So Rafaela is actually asking, is it possible to change the sentiment for more than one comment at the same time? Because you just talked about this overriding feature.
Okay, that's a good one. Thank you, Rafaela. So in the first release, we won't have like a bulk operation like this. So at the moment, it would be single reclassify, just because we assume that there would not be a need to really reclassify at like a large scale. But it's a good idea, and we will gladly take it with us.
Thank you very much, Rafaela. And also one question from Martin that just came in also. I think Martin probably already worked a little bit with Audience Pulse, at least that's what I'm reading. And he actually said that we figured that in the case of his organization, that the AI sentiment does not really understand irony, sarcasm. And if we're going to work on this, and I feel like, Andreas, you already mentioned that obviously sarcasm, irony is a difficult thing for AI, but what's your stance on that? How has your experience been with the different projects and the different sentiments?
Got it. Yeah, thank you, Alina. Thank you, Martin. It's also a good and legitimate question. It's obviously not an easy job, right? And probably it's also case by case dependent. So I would be very curious to see those specific examples and maybe talk about it, because right now it's of course a bit hard to say when it exactly works and when not. So it might be also something for follow-up call maybe.
Yeah, but this is super important for us. We want to talk about that in the end also, but like really getting the feedback from everyone that tests Audience Pulse and really works with sentiment analysis, and how often you might have to use the overrule function and manual overrule it. But yeah, it's interesting to test and to get your different experiences within. But now, Andreas, back to you and show us the strategic level of Audience Pulse.
Yeah, thank you so much. And please keep the questions coming. They're all great. So the communication leads view, this is where sentiment at every level of your topic architecture comes in. And here we are providing you with a small but efficient sentiment analytics dashboard. And whether or not you already use or know Scompler, you can picture the topic architecture quite simply. This is basically the hierarchy you run all your communications from. So articles sit at the ground level. These are the individual pieces you publish. Articles roll up into stories, and stories roll up into your broader topics. So topics, stories, articles, it's our main structure. And here is where Scompler can really shine, because that structure is also exactly how the aggregation of sentiment works, because sentiment comes from the comments. A comment belongs to an article. That article belongs to a story, and that story belongs to a topic. So we can take the sentiment on every comment and roll it all the way up that chain, which means on all those objects, you now get a new sentiment analytics tab in Scompler. And that is what you see here. So it's a small dashboard of 4 widgets, and it's also the same 4 widgets at every single object level. So there's nothing for you to set up, and it sits right alongside the performance metrics that are already there and that you already track. So the insight is right there on the objects that you're already looking at. I wanted to also walk you through those 4 widgets for better understanding and more transparency. So the first one here is sentiment distribution, and this one answers the most simple question, like what's the general sentiment here, how it is distributed across the categories, and how many comments came in, and what does the overall reaction looks like. So that's a classical sanity check, right? The second widget is sentiment over time. And this answers the question, how did it change? So if you're running a campaign over several weeks or even months, you can see whether there were spikes or particular moments where the negativity climbed and tie them back to what you actually published. And the third widget is sentiment by network. This one answers the question, where's the sentiment coming from? So if you posted the same story on multiple channels or platforms like LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and others, you get the full breakdown per network, and that often tells you something about audience and channel fit that you simply couldn't see before. And the fourth one is my personal favorite, actually, the net sentiment score. So this one is the classical management KPI. So it takes your percentage of positive comments, subtracts the percentage of negative, and gives you a single number on a scale from minus 100 to plus 100. And this is really the kind of number you can put on a QBR slide when leadership asks how a topic or initiative is going, and see at a glance whether you're mostly positive, mostly negative, or somewhere in between. And lastly, there's one design choice worth naming, because this was actually important for us at Scompler when we were building that. So all of this lives directly inside of your topic architecture. So on the very same objects your teams already use to plan and run their communication, right? So it sits exactly where the execution already happens, instead of in a separate standalone dashboard you would go and have to check. So we wanted the insight to reach you in the very same place you and your teams are already working, and you can read it and adapt while your communication is still running. That's the product as it goes live today, but it's actually just one step on the longer road for us. So next, I wanted to zoom out and show you where we are heading. So this here is the bigger picture of where Audience Pulse sits and where it's hopefully taking us. So let me walk it left to right for you. On the left side, we got audience centricity. So as many of you know, Scompler has always been strategy first. And in that world, audiences are becoming more and more critical from our point of view. And that's where audience centricity comes in as our underlying product philosophy. We think that communication should start with the audiences in mind. So the goal shouldn't just be to get something out of the door and generate a few metrics like reach or clicks or whatever. It should rather be to understand how that communication actually lands with the people you're trying to reach in the first place, right? So that's the direction, like the fundamental direction we want to build toward across the whole Scompler platform, so that we can help you work in an audience-centric way at every step. In the middle is where we are today, Audience Pulse. It's the first measurable and direct signal we have from your audiences. And I really see it as a first building block, because right now that signal is sentiment drawn from the individual comments and brought together. But over time, there could be other signals too, right? So things we don't capture yet, like whether people actually agree with what you're saying, so whether they are aligned or not. And coming back to sentiment, we are also already expanding it. So the next iteration will be bringing sentiment analytics into our reports module in Scompler. So you will be able to analyze it across your entire content portfolio and not just on the individual objects inside the topic architecture as we've seen before. So that's what you can expect next on that front. And on the right, further out, is narrative intelligence. Now, this is really our long-term vision for Scompler. And it really comes down to one question. Is your communication actually changing what people think, what they feel, and what they do? And are you actually moving the hearts and minds of people? So to put it simply, Scompler today can already tell you quite well what happened, right? Did people see your messaging? Did they react to it? Narrative intelligence is more about understanding what this means. And it also matters for a bigger reason too. Because for communication teams, the toughest challenge that we often keep hearing has kind of always been the same. And that is that showing their work really makes a difference to the business. So we can show the number of published content, we can show reach, we can show engagement. Now we can also show sentiment, which is cool. But connecting that to what leadership really cares about most, to revenue, to reputation, to the goals they are being measured on, that has honestly always been quite of a struggle and a missing piece. So closing that gap is exactly what narrative intelligence is intended for, to take that audience response and turn it into evidence that a management team can act on. So, and that's how we at Scompler really want to help communication teams to finally earn their seat at the table. And we see Audience Pulse as the door opener for this. Because when you boil it all the way down, communication has this one central job, to move people in what they think, in what they feel, in what they do. And Audience Pulse is how we start to actually measure it today. This was the grand scheme of things. So Audience Pulse is the big thing we're releasing today, but it's actually not the only thing moving. So let me give a quick preview of what else is coming and maybe check first if there are questions that came in the meantime.
Yes, thank you, Andreas. One interesting question came in from Thomas. Will it also be available for the staff-based integration? So maybe I can start with that and then hand it over to you, Andreas, to maybe give a couple of more insights. But for now, obviously, Audience Pulse is integrated into community management and social media management within Scompler. So for now, no, it is not available for the staff-based integration. But I really liked what you just said, Andreas, really of us opening the doors, moving towards narrative intelligence. And I feel like while we're on that road, of course, it will become more relevant to see which more sentiment data we can integrate and even work with partners such as Staffbase to do so and to really opening up the doors for that. But over to you, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question because this goes into like enriching the pool of sentiment that we can capture, right? So for those of you who don't know, Staffbase is an employee app and intranet solution. And we already have a very deep integration for Staffbase in Scompler. So you can create content, you can publish to Staffbase channels, and we also have a very deep analytics integration. What is actually still missing, and there you got a point, Thomas, is the community management integration. That's something we got to check if it's possible, like technically feasible from the Staffbase API side of things to do it. And if it's possible, we would also be very glad to explore it together, right? Because also, as you might have heard, we have recently launched our marketplace at Scompler, and this now gives us also a bit more options to integrate certain use cases like publishing, content creation, analytics, and community management. So as Alina said, it's actually a natural next step.
Amazing. And another really interesting question that came in from Sylvia, I really like that. Can we see whether and how the sentiment of particular people or particular target groups has changed over time?
That's a good one, Sylvia, probably already one step ahead. So I think in the current implementation, you can probably more like infer it, right? Because the sentiment is currently drawn from the individual comments and then attributed to the Scompler objects. But boiling it down to specific audiences, audiences that maybe you have defined in the first place, we don't cover it yet today. But it's actually exactly where we want to go, especially in the context of our vision that I've just presented. So really good one.
And also for now, like the channel overview and the sentiment over time within the channels gives a nice overview, I feel like, as well, on how sentiments have changed and what role, as you also said, Andreas, the specific channels play, and if topics match the audience of channels in the right way. Okay, handing it back to you. I see that we also have a question that came in from Fulia, but actually I will answer this question when I take over in a little bit. So handing it over again to you, Andreas, for showing us what else is coming.
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, this is really my last part because we have spent most of our time today in two areas of the product, so in community management and insights. So I wanted to quickly show you what else we're working on in exactly those two areas beyond Audience Pulse. So on the community management side, there are two things. First, we are working on a mobile responsive version of the inbox you've just seen, because we keep hearing that teams are often on call, especially on the weekends, without their work computer in front of them, and they still need to be able to do community management, most likely from their private mobile phone. So that is why we are working on a responsive version. We are actually also already in the final stretches of the implementation, so it's coming, and it's coming soon. The second point is approvals for community management. So that's going to be a lightweight per channel approval workflow with a full audit trail in the activity log, so that every message going out has been approved and is on brand. And that one is obviously mostly relevant for enterprise customers or companies that work in a highly regulated environment. And we keep hearing from a lot of our customers as well. So that bit of a governance workflow in the reply flow from community management, it will also come soon. On the insights front, we are working on a pragmatic set of what we call reports boosters. So these are going to be upgrades to our reports module in Scompler. And they are mostly updates to the widgets that some of you already know and use. So for example, there's going to be a new performance over time chart, which also helps you to track the quantitative metrics across your content portfolio. And there also sentiment will find its place. Also, we are working on more flexible filters, higher row caps on the table widgets, which helps for export and reporting. And last but not least, we are also working on a better way to analyze articles that aren't of social media nature. So if you think about things like newsletters, events, or offline content, and we are doing this with a function that we call manual metrics that we already have in Scompler, and that's something a lot of customers have been asking for. So all this is yet to come. But honestly, none of this works without you, because you are the practitioners and you are the people who are doing this job every day. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Alina for a call to action. Alina.
Yes, thank you very much, Andreas. As you just said, basically, you guys are the experts. You really work within your communication marketing departments. You work with Scompler, you work with social media management. So please try Audience Pulse and share what works for you and what doesn't work for you and where we can get even better. And let's make sure to make this work and optimize it together. So really talk to your customer success manager about the use cases that matter most to you. Reach out to us directly. And yeah, it's cool to see because we have different options to actually do so depending on where you are today. So we probably have people here that are already Scompler customers that have already enabled community management. For you, very good news. It's included, it's active today since I think this morning, 8 a.m. So maybe you even already saw it before the webinar. It's included at no additional cost. It's automatically activated, and as usual, your customer success manager is your contact for questions, for onboarding support. So just reach out to us, talk to your CSM to make sure you get the best use out of testing Audience Pulse and working with it. We might also have people here who are Scompler customers, but they don't have the community management yet. So good news, we launched our Scompler Marketplace, I think now 6 weeks ago. So still pretty brand new also, but it's a cool function that you can find down below on the left side in your Scompler navigation, where you can actually activate a 30-day free trial of the community management app in the marketplace. So you activate the community management with one click. Audience Pulse is included automatically. And while you test it within this 30-day free trial, you can continuously talk to your customer success manager. And then if it works for you, to actually turning the trial into a subscription. So community management is an add-on for Scompler. It's based on project size, so it's an individual pricing, but it definitely makes sense for organizations that have a lot of social media content going on and want to take care of their communities and now also include their sentiments. And if you're fully new to Scompler, you can get to know not only Audience Pulse, but Scompler as a whole. I will get another survey for that on the right side. Let me just have a look to actually make it easier for us to contact us, make it easier for you to contact us. So you can just add your choices if you want to get to know Scompler in a demo and a test phase for your team, including community management, including Audience Pulse, to really test the platform and get to know how it can support your communication work. Or if you're already using Scompler and you would like to get to know community management and Audience Pulse even better, we are also very happy to give you a more insightful demo and onboarding process for that. So this leaves me for the end. I hope, I forgot Fulya's question, but I hope, Fulya, that I answered it. So yes, as a partner, you are able to use Audience Pulse if you have the community management already active, and if not, feel free to check it out in the marketplace. It's a really easy step because we want to make it, as easy and efficient for everyone to work with it. Actually, we were a bit longer now than we expected, Andreas.
True.
But I mean, there were questions coming in, and I feel like if you start talking about a specific topic, there are just different things that come into mind that might be insightful for you. So here you find another QR code to learn more about Audience Pulse. It brings me to the end of this webinar, I guess. I think there are no questions open. Let us know afterwards, of course, if there are any other questions. Talk to your CSM about it. Share the slides, share the presentation with your team, especially if you have a social media team and you're not part of it, or if you want to share it with your leadership team, with your head of communications, feel free to do so. Thank you very, very much for joining today. I had a great time, and I hope we see you very soon for our next webinar. And Andreas, the biggest of thank yous goes out to you for building and developing Audience Pulse and for joining me today here.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure, and thank you for the great exchange and the contributions. And I would say until next time.
Yes, great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.